the whisper in the mirror. The first time Aygul noticed it, she thought it was nothing more than exhaustion. Her days had been long, her nights even longer. She had been living alone for months, in a silent apartment where the ticking of the clock sounded like a heartbeat that wasn't hers. That night, as the city outside her window fell into its usual darkness, she woke up gasping, the remains of a dream still clinging to her mind like cobwebs. She couldn't recall what she had seen, only the sensation of being watched, of eyes that followed her even when her own were shut. Needing water, she dragged herself into the bathroom, the cold tiles numbing her bare feet. She turned on the dim yellow light and leaned on the sink. That was when she saw it. Her reflection didn't move right. When she blinked, it blinked a fraction too late. When she tilted her head, its neck seemed to resist, snapping into place a second afterward. Aygul's throat tightened. She raised her hand slowly, fingers trembling, and the reflection followed, but with a delay. "Just tired," she whispered to herself, clutching the edge of the sink. "Just tired." But then it smiled. Her lips hadn't moved, yet the figure in the glass stretched its mouth into a grin that was all teeth, all wrong. She stumbled back, shaking her head in disbelief. The bathroom seemed to close in around her, the shadows deepening at the corners, until all she could hear was the pounding of her pulse. And then it spoke. "We both know, don't we?" Her blood ran cold. The voice wasn't in the room. It was inside the mirror. A whisper, low and intimate, as though someone leaned close to her ear. Aygul's breath came fast, fogging up the glass. She wanted to run, but her legs refused to obey. The reflection tilted its head, movements sharper now, eyes gleaming with something alive. "You can't hide it forever. I see what you've done. I see what you really are." Her knees gave out, and she slid to the floor, clutching her head. She hadn't done anything. Nothing worth this. Nothing at all. But the words struck deep, pulling at memories she had tried so hard to bury. The night of the accident. The scream. The silence that followed. The reflection laughed softly, a sound like glass cracking. From that night on, she couldn't look in the mirror the same way again. She began covering them with cloths, avoiding her own reflection. Yet sometimes, when she passed a dark window or glanced into a polished surface, she saw her double grinning back at her, lips moving silently. Whispers followed her everywhere. When she tried to sleep, she heard her own voice muttering from the corner of her room. When she showered, words scratched against the fogged glass. "Confess, confess." Her mind unraveled. Days bled into nights, and she no longer trusted herself. She avoided people, fearing they would see the cracks, hear the whispers too. But worse than isolation was the moment she began to wonder. What if the reflection was right? What if the whispers weren't lies? What if the thing in the mirror wasn't tormenting her, but revealing the truth? Cracks in the glass. For days, Aygul avoided the bathroom. She washed her face in the kitchen sink, brushed her teeth in the dark, never daring to lift her eyes to the glass. Every reflective surface was a trap, and she knew it. But avoiding a mirror didn't stop it. At first, it was only at night. She would lie in bed, forcing herself not to think, when she heard the faint scratching sound, like fingernails dragging slowly down glass. Sometimes it came from the bathroom door. Sometimes from the wardrobe mirror she had covered with a sheet. And sometimes from the inside of her head. "We're the same," the whisper breathed one night. She sat up, trembling, clutching her blanket to her chest. "Why do you pretend to be someone you're not?" Her heart raced. She pressed her palms against her ears, trying to shut it out. But the voice was under her skin, slithering in her thoughts. She stumbled to the kitchen, desperate to drown it with noise. She turned on the TV, cranked the volume. But even over the blaring sound, she could hear her own voice whispering, soft and mocking, from behind her. She turned quickly, and there it was. The darkened window above the sink reflected her pale face. But it wasn't her. The reflection leaned closer, pressing against the glass from the other side, lips moving. "Tell them what you did that night." Her stomach knotted. The accident. The night she swore she would never speak of again. The blood on her hands, not real blood, she told herself, but still it haunted her. No, she whispered aloud, shaking her head. No one knows. No one will know. The reflection grinned, and the glass cracked. The visitor. A week later, Aygul thought she was losing her mind completely. She had stopped going to work, stopped answering her phone. Her friends left messages that went unheard. Food rotted in her fridge. The curtains stayed closed, her apartment drowning in shadows. On the 7th night, someone knocked at her door. 3 sharp raps. Her heart leapt. Nobody visited her, not anymore. She stayed frozen, listening. Another knock. This time slower. She crept to the door and pressed her eye to the peephole. No one was there. Her breath hitched. She turned back toward her room, then stopped cold. The mirror in the hallway, the one she had covered with an old sheet, was bare. The cloth lay crumpled on the floor, and her reflection was standing inside the glass, staring directly at her. Not mimicking her movements. Not delayed. Just watching. It lifted its hand and knocked on the other side of the mirror. Knock. 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 Her knees weakened. She stumbled back, clutching her mouth to stop the scream rising in her throat. The reflection tilted its head, smiling with unnatural patience. Then its lips moved, forming words she couldn't hear. She understood them anyway. Let me out. Sleepless. Aygul no longer trusted herself. Days blurred into nights, and nights into endless hours of staring into the dark. She dared not sleep. When she closed her eyes, she felt the cold pressure of a hand brushing against her skin, as though her reflection had found a way to crawl closer. Coffee cups piled on the counter. Uneaten food sat untouched. She was wasting away, her face gaunt, eyes hollow. But the mirror version of her looked healthier every day. When she passed the bathroom door and caught a glimpse, the reflection's cheeks were full, her skin glowing, her hair shining. She looked alive, vibrant even, while Aygul herself was rotting from within. And the reflection mocked her with that same gentle smile. One night, unable to resist, she whispered to the glass, "Why are you doing this to me?" The reflection tilted its head, eyes gleaming. Its lips moved slowly, carefully. "Because you're mine." Her breath caught. "No, you're not real." The reflection's smile widened. Then it did something she never expected. It raised its hand and pressed its palm against the glass. And this time, the glass warped beneath the touch, rippling as though it were liquid. Aygul fell back in horror, knocking over a chair. The sound echoed in the silence of the apartment. Her reflection's hand stayed there, pressed against the surface, the shape of its palm bulging outward like it was testing the barrier. The whisper filled her skull, louder now, no longer a murmur but a command. "Let me in." The confession. The next morning, Aygul couldn't bear it anymore. She left her apartment, staggering through the streets like a drunk. People glanced at her, some avoiding her entirely. She hadn't bathed, hadn't slept. She felt like a stranger in her own skin. She ended up at the old church at the edge of town. She wasn't religious, not really, but she needed silence, somewhere without mirrors. The priest on duty, an older man with kind but wary eyes, guided her into a small, dim confessional booth. "My child," he said gently, "what troubles you?" Her voice shook. I see things. In mirrors. She speaks to me. She knows." Knows what? Her throat tightened. She hadn't said it aloud in years. "The accident," she whispered. "It was my fault. I didn't stop in time. The car had hit him. I left him there. I ran." Her body shook with sobs she had buried deep inside, tears streaming down her cheeks. The silence on the other side of the booth was heavy, suffocating. Then she heard it. A laugh. Not the priest's laugh. Her own. Her blood froze. Slowly, trembling, she pushed the curtain aside. The confessional was empty, and in the polished wood panel beside her, her reflection smiled back, lips forming the words she dreaded most. "You can confess to me,